Hello, everyone, and welcome to Eclipse IDE webinar. My name is Serena, and joining us today is Kalyan, Sravan, and Christoph, who will be presenting 3 talks for us today. If you have any questions for either of them as we move through today's presentation, feel free to ask them in the chat or use the Ask a Questions tab. Without any further delay, Kalyan, over to you to kick us off.
Hello everyone, I'm Kalyan Prasad. I'm a GRT co-lead and a committer on platform. Today I'll be talking about the code snippet support for Javadoc in Java 18. Let's go through the highlights of the support that has been provided in Java 18 for code snippets. The snippet tag, which has been introduced for Javadoc standard Doclet to simplify the inclusion of example source code in API documentation. The support for enabling modern styling such as syntax highlighting using @highlight tag, as well as the automatic linkage of names to declarations using @link tag within that snippet tag has been added. Support for properties files to be added as snippets has also been provided. There has been support that has been added for regions, mainly for two purposes. One is to identify a region of code that has to be added as snippet in a separate file. So you can specify to a file and a region name in another file, and that will be added as a snippet in the Javadoc for a file. Additionally, there is a scope that can be defined for an action such as highlight, link, etc. to generate the Javadoc. Support for replacement of a regex in a snippet in the generated Javadoc has been added. There are two reasons why that has been done. That is, it is convenient to write the content of a snippet as code that can be accessed and validated by external tools, but to display it in a form that does not compile. You can use the replacement regex for this purpose. Secondly, it is desirable to display code with an ellipse or some other marker to indicate that additional code should be inserted at any point. So for these purposes, at replacement has been tag has been added, which can be used in a at snippet tag to replace a specific string or a regular expression. Now let's go to live demonstration of how this can be done. So now let us see a simple example here, inline Javadoc snippets. Let us go to the first example here. I simply have a sample snippet code in which I am referencing system.out.println, in which it has an inline snippet example in system.out.println. Let's see the generated Javadoc code for it. I'm opening there is already a generated Javadoc code for it in doc. Let me open it. So the generated Javadoc code adds here sample snippet code, and system.out.println has been added here in a box. So you can see how this snippet code has been generated. Okay. Now let's go to a little more complex example using @highlight. So here are some snippet codes with highlightings. For example, you have line number 6 where I am using @highlight tag within the @snippet code @snippet tag. Here where I'm referencing a substring called inline snippet, and the type of highlighting is highlighted. In the next line, I'm again using system.out.println, in which I'm highlighting the substring inline snippet, and the type of highlighting is bold. In the next line, I'm using system.out.println, again the same inline snippet sample 3, where the substring is again inline snippet, but the type of highlighting is italic. And in the last line, I'm using, instead of substring, a regular expression, which here points out to any code, any string which is within double quotes, and the type of highlighting is highlighted. Now let's see what happens to the Javadoc that gets generated for this. So as we saw, the first line, it said highlighted. So the inline snippet has been highlighted here. In the second line, the highlighting is bold. So the inline snippet is written in bold. In the third line, the highlighting is italic. So the inline snippet here is italic. And in the fourth line, it looks for the regex which is within the quotes. And the regex within the quotes is this inline snippet sample 4. The whole thing gets highlighted. So this is the way the highlighting is being used for generating the Javadoc. Now let's go to replacement. Let's see an example of replacement. Let's see the code first before we go to the Javadoc for that. So I have here a sample snippet code with replacement. and the system.out.println inline snippet sample. Here the regex that I'm using is inline snippet. So what am I trying to replace it with? Dot 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 in snippet dot dot dot. So the inline snippet has to be replaced with this. And the next line I have system.out.println inline snippet sample, where I'm again referring to the regex within the quotes. So the whole string inline snippet sample has to be replaced with dot dot dot. Let's see the generated Javadoc. So this is replace. Let's open the Javadoc associated with it. And now you see the inline snippet has been replaced with dot 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 in snippet dot dot dot. And in the second line, the whole string within quotes has been replaced with dot dot dot, which matches the regex. So now let's go back to one more example here. Next example is with respect to link. So let's see how link works. Let's look at the code. Now I have sample snippet code with link to definition. So now, for example, I have system.out.println inline snippet sample. Now I want to link system.out string to the out definition. So how do I do it? It starts with a single line comment at link substring system.out, and the target associated with it system hash out. So this automatically says this is system and the target is system hash out. So the linking of the system.out substring should happen with this system hash out. Now let's look at the generated Javadoc for this. You see that system.out has been linked here. Let us click on this. It goes and opens the system hash out associated Javadoc. So now the next thing, there is one more facility provided. Now, for example, you have a very large piece of code, line of code. Now, if you add this highlighting part to the end of the string, and that may exceed the editor, which is not so visible to the user. So they have Javadoc has provided a way of providing this for at replace at highlight, so that in this I can specify it in the previous line and say that this uh, annotation acts on the next line by adding at the end colon. When as soon as I add at the end of the line colon, it means that this whole uh, replacement tag will act on the next line. So, for example, now in this uh, the whole code hello world should be replaced with dot dot dot. And now for the next, and I have given in this line at highlight substring inline snippet, and it has to be highlighted, but I added colon at the end. So this at highlight will not act on the line number 7, but will act on the next line, line number 8. Let's see the generated Javadoc for this. As expected, system.out.println, the whole regex got replaced with dot dot dot, and the highlight which was there in this line got applied on the next line. Inline snippet got highlighted. Now this is for next. Now we can also use properties file for generating Javadoc. How do we do that? So there is a property called lang. You can say specify the language as properties, which means that the code that you're providing in the snippet are related to properties, and that is the code that will be parsed. Now at properties file, you do not use single quotes as slash slash, so single line comments, and you use single line comments as hash. So in the properties file, for providing highlighting etc., you will have to not use slash slash, but you will have to use hash. So here I have given local dot time zone PST highlight regex anything between 0 to 9 multiple times, and type is highlighted. So the expected thing is in the next line, because you have given a colon at the end, in the next line local dot zip 94123 has to be highlighted. So let's go and see the expected result. And we see here local dot time zone, the whole code got added here, and 94123 has got highlighted. So in this way, properties file also is supported to be added as inline snippet. Now let's go to regions. So as we have specified here, there are two reasons why regions get added. One is identify a region of code to be added as snippet. Second is define the scope of actions. So let us look at this second option, define the scope of actions such as highlighting or replacement. So the example for that is here in the region. Now what I can say is at highlight, I have specified the region starting here. Substring is inline snippet and type is highlighted. But I don't want it to be applied only from here because region has started here until I specify at end the for all the lines in that codes in the snippet, this highlighting gets applied. So we are saying that for the line number 6, line number 7, and line number 8, the highlighting should happen. Line number 9, no highlighting will happen. Line number 10, the highlighting happens according to the highlight option provided here. Now let's go to region and let's look at it. So as we see, system.out.println inline snippet for the first 3 lines highlighting happens. For the fourth line, highlighting does not happen. And for the fifth line, the whole line got highlighted based on that line's highlight option provided. So these are the way regions work here. You can as well have multiple regions overlapping each other. So example for that is, now for example here I have started at highlight region 1, where I am saying that the substring is inline snippet and type is highlighted. And this will region end 1 ends in line number 9. So for 3 lines, the region 1 you are saying you are going to highlight inline snippet. And for the line number 7, you have divided a new region called region 2, where you are saying the substring is sample, and this ends with region line number 10. So we'll we'll look at how this looks like. The generated Javadoc. The inline snippet is highlighted only for the first 3 lines, and the sample is highlighted from wherever the region 2 is started and region 2 ends. And the last line has a separate highlighting by itself option. As you see, you can define regions where the highlighting or replacement or link actions happen. I have just used highlighting here, but the same applies for link as well as replacement. Now let us look at how Eclipse supports this also. So let us see here. I am going to the Javadoc. See here, inline snippet 1 introduction. Eclipse also shows in the Javadoc the generated Javadoc for this for intro, which is similar. For inline snippet 2, again it shows first line is highlighted, second line is bold, third line is italic, and the fourth line the whole regex is highlighted. And for replacement, the replacement also is very similar. Inline snippet is replaced with dot 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 in snippet here. And here for regex, the whole regex which is in quotes has been replaced with dot dot dot, which is the expected result. Now for link also, system.out has to be linked, and you see that system.out is linked here. You click on it, it takes you to system.out. You can come back to this. So, and for next also, it is supposed to act on the next line. So inline snippet is highlighted here. And for the properties file also, if you look at it, the highlighting happened and 94123 has been highlighted here. Now for the regions also, you can see for first 3 lines the highlighting has worked because only for the first 3 lines the region has been defined, and that's what happens here. And for multi-region also, the first 3 lines this inline snippet has been highlighted, and for the region 2 where we are saying that from the 7th line to the 10th line sample has to be highlighted, sample is highlighted. So the Javadoc support for inline snippets has been provided in Eclipse, which can be seen. Now let's go to the next option is Javadoc external snippet support. So now, for example, how do I use external snippets? Now I have here a snippet, a project called test external Javadoc snippets, in which there are 2 folders, snippet files and Javadoc snippets. Now in this external snippet 1, I want to refer to a class, snippet file slash snippet file 1. And what does that contain? Here it contains package snippet files, author name, snippet public class snippet file 1, a main function in which it is saying it has defined a region, and it is saying the region starts from line number 11 and ends with line number 30, and you have to highlight. And this whole thing has to be generated in the added in the external snippet. So if you look at it, Javadoc shows this whole code has been added here, and the hello has been highlighted. And let's look at the generated doc for this also external snippet 1. And you see here similar thing is generated here. The whole code in external snippet 1 dot class has been added, and the hello has been highlighted here. And the way to define it is you define a class snippet files slash snippet files 1. But for generating this Javadoc, how do you do this? So what happens is to generate the Javadoc in Eclipse project generate Javadoc, you will have to define a parameter called snippet path. In Eclipse, we assume that the snippet path defaults to SRC folder. So that's the way it works here for the Javadoc in Eclipse. You can specify any snippet path for Javadoc generation, but to maintain consistency between Eclipse and Javadoc, we have used the same path here also. So the same path is being provided here to SRC folder, and the Javadoc has been generated. And as you see, the Javadoc is same as the one that has been being shown in Eclipse. Now let's go to external snippet file. Here we have used a class parameter, which points to a class. You can as well use a file parameter, which you can point to a file. Now, for example, I can say file enter snippet file slash snippet file 1.java, and I can say snippet file slash snippet file 2.java and a region. Now, what is snippet file 2? Here in this, I have specified a class called snippet file 2, but here I have specified a region from line number 11 to line number 15. And when we specify a region, we mean that only this part of the code should be added as a snippet. So let's see what happens here. External snippet. Let's go to the generated Javadoc for this. So for the first part, where I'm saying add the whole file snippet file 1, the whole file has got added to the class snippet. You see package snippet file 1 has been added. But for the main method, we have said that only a region has to be added, which is hello world, hello Java, hello Java 2. So this is the code that has got added. Now let's look at properties file. We can the reason why file is provided is you need not have a Java file also alone. You can have a properties file also. Now here, for example, I have said external properties 3 properties file, where I'm pointing the file to a snippet files message.properties. Now what is this message.properties? I have just defined some properties, local.timezone, highlighting the next line here, local.zip, local.area code, very similar to the inline snippet code. And what happens to the generated Java? So local.timezone has been added, local.zip and local.area code has been added. So if you look at it, this is the way Javadoc has been generated for this. Now this is for external snippets where you have to point to a specific folder for generation of the Javadoc. There is an implicit way of also doing it, which has been provided in Javadoc. You can have in each package you can have a snippet hyphen files in the in a package you can have snippet hyphen files which is in which you have the snippet files. These are not part of the compilation that is happening, but you can refer to them mainly only for the snippets that are to be generated. Now here I am just specifying class 1 at snippet class snippet file 1. This directly refers to automatically snippet hyphen file, the classes within snippet hyphen files. And here I am defining at snippet class snippet file 1 and a region within it. What does this have? For the first case, the whole snippet file 1 class should come, and for the second case, only the region here starting with that started at it. These two lines will be excluded. Within this, whatever is the region, the code is there that has to get added. Let's look at the generated Javadoc for this. For the class, the whole file has been added, and if you look at it for the method, only the 3 lines get added. So this is the way the Javadoc gets generated for implicit snippets. And if you look at it, generate Javadoc for the implicit part, I don't need to add the argument. The snippet path is not required actually. The snippet path is required only for external snippet, and I am not even pointing to the folder that is called snippet hyphen files. This is pointing to SRC, but still it works because the Javadoc generation automatically takes care of files placed within a package in the snip and in a folder called snippet hyphen files. So this is a brief introduction to the support for at snippets. You can all try it out and see how Eclipse works and provide your feedback. If you have any questions, please ask them.
It doesn't look like there's any questions, Kalyan.
Okay, then.
Just comments of nice.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being patient.
Amazing. So we're going to pass it on to Sravan.
Thank you, everyone.
Hi everyone, I'm Sravan. I'm Eclipse platform uh, co-lead as well as I'm a committer on Eclipse Equinox, GDT, and JustJ projects. I mostly I handle all the release related activities across Eclipse top level project. In this talk, I'm going to talk about migration to GitHub. At the start of this year, you might have known uh, Eclipse top level project is on the hosted Git repositories at Eclipse Foundation. Now we have migrated to GitHub, and Eclipse 425, which was released last week, was the first release fully done from GitHub. So this is the agenda. Why we had to migrate and how we migrated and what is the impact on the workflows as well as on the community. what kind of impact it has caused. Now, let's see why we had to migrate. Uh, at, we were using a couple of tools for Eclipse migration. One was bugzilla for bug tracking, and Git repositories, which are hosted at Eclipse Foundation infrastructure, and another one is a gerrit repository, gerrit tool for code reviews. Now, bugzilla is out of support from quite some time because these softwares are going out of support, and at the same time, since these are hosted services, Eclipse Foundation has to maintain these softwares in-house. So Foundation wants to reduce their effort. Foundation wants to reduce their effort in these areas. So they, oh, I'm not sharing.
No, we don't see it sharing yet. And now you are.
Sorry,
Perfect.
sorry.
Amazing.
It's good. It's good that Kalyan is with me. So Kalyan actually informed me. I was just talking. So no problem. Uh, so Foundation wants to reduce their hosted services, and at the same time uh, they want to avoid unsupported softwares like Bugzilla. So for this purpose, Eclipse Foundation announced a migration plan around August 2020 uh, at the and this became a real concrete plan by Jan within 6 months, Jan 2021. The options we were given are either GitHub, it's a public GitHub website, and another one is a GitLab. GitLab is again hosted service at Eclipse Foundation. So this again we will be using with GitLab, we will be using Eclipse Foundation resources again. Uh, so the decision was for us, it is kind of obvious. We Since most of the open source projects are being hosted by GitHub, we decided to go for GitHub directly. Yeah, and we have one more advantage here. GitHub provides some resources to open source projects for GitHub Action, so we can leverage that as well. So now the question is how to migrate. If you look at Eclipse top level project, we have one aggregator repository, and there are at the start of this year, we had one aggregator repository and 23 submodule repositories, and more than 5 documentation repositories. Uh, so all these repositories have to be migrated to GitHub, but doing all of them at the single shot is going to be a tough job for us. So we decided one by one approach, and we started experimenting with aggregator repository first. Aggregator repository is the smallest one, and at the same time it's the most complicated one because all the build related stuff is there in the aggregator repository itself. So anything happens to aggregator repository, build will fail. So it is much more faster response time. So we will get a faster feedback with that repository. So uh, that is what we have decided. Now here I have to give a shout out to Michael Istria and Frederick Gore. Michael Istria from Red Hat and Frederick Gore from Eclipse Foundation to helping us out here. And uh, uh, with the help of Fred, we migrated the aggregator repository, and Michael Istria worked on getting the aggregator repository fetch necessary source code from submodules, either from hosted Git repositories or GitHub. So both we were able in the when we are transitioning, there will be some repositories in hosted Git and some repositories in GitHub. So uh, we have to support that scenario as well. So that scenario also we have worked around, and we got them fixed. Uh, and during that process, we are able to get the exact steps what needs to be done. We have a document for that, and uh, uh, with that, and once aggregator repositories migrated, we started with a couple more platform repositories to test our migration document. Once those were done by end of 423, and with in 424 we migrated all the other repositories, and we successfully delivered 424 from GitHub. We started with hosted Git repositories for 424, and 425 is the full release where we started source code in GitHub and released from there. Okay. Now, since we migrated to GitHub, one of the major impact is uh, till now we were using gerrit repositories for code reviews. Now we have to use pull requests instead of gerrit patches. This is one breaking workflow for old timers, but for the newcomers, it may not be that breaking. Yeah. So this is one major impact on the old timers, but this is also good thing to attract newcomers. And now bugs and features, since bugzilla is not a supported software, since we had to move away from that, we decided to move to GitHub issues and pull requests. For most of the feature enhancements, we are using GitHub issues, and major bug fixes also we are using GitHub issues. But simple bug fixes, we are using pull requests directly, and both can be tracked from a umbrella issues like a Java 19 features. So it is much more easier to track now. Uh, there for any project, we can create umbrella projects, and we can track multiple issues or multiple PRs from the same issue as a checklist. In this case, for platform, we are suggesting Eclipse platform to be used as umbrella issue repository. Similarly, Eclipse JDT for JDT, PDE for PDE, and Equinox for Equinox. That is how that is our suggestion. If there are any specific changes or enhancements to be done in an individual repository, then you can open an issue in that individual repository and track them there. Okay, on the impact on the community, this is overall positive impact, and there are multiple suggestions and multiple improvement PRs came from all corners of the community. Actually, uh, there are a couple of highlights a couple of things which I really want to say here. One is regular validation of existing code. If you look at SWT tests are validated on multiple platforms and multiple Java instances, like using GitHub Actions. When you look at any PR validation job, currently we were testing only on uh, Linux platform. Now with this PR, there is one GitHub action added along with PR validation, and this actually tests PR on Mac, Windows, and Linux with Java 11 and Java 17. This kind of testing is added. I guess it is Christoph, you did that, right? I believe so. Okay, so Sim Similarly, there are more improvements in the validation schedule, and we have README and contribution guides across multiple repositories. Earlier, README and contribution guides are really outdated, and when we migrated to GitHub, uh, many people volunteered to update all the documentation, etc., so that any newcomer can find their feet. So another important feature is another important feature which was contributed by community is managing Maven dependencies using Dependabot. We are leveraging GitHub bots as well here, and using Dependabot, uh, we are managing all our Maven dependencies. So if the it, we use multiple Maven plugins in our build, and earlier we were manually managing each of these plugins. Now we directly use Dependabot, and that Dependabot gives us a pull request. Using that pull request, uh, uh, we can validate whether that new Maven dependency is working or not. If it works, we can commit that into our code. That way we can actually manage that. So we are utilizing that kind of features now. Earlier we don't have that kind of facilities available. Okay, for the next steps, we are currently doing migration of documentation bundles. For the documentation bundles, we had website websites needs to pull in from GitHub. So at the start of this year, the documentation publishing story was not complete. Now it is ready, so we are currently doing it. Then wherever we are continuously improving on the GitHub process, wherever possible, uh, we want to avoid manual intervention and reduce human uh, human mistakes, basically typos like that. So wherever possible, it is better to automate. That is what we are trying to do. Wherever possible, automate tasks using GitHub Actions. At the same time, leverage resources provided by GitHub for peer GitHub Actions. So, and at the same time, using GitHub bots for validating dependencies. And right now, we don't have a validation with Orbit. So that is also something we have to uh, depend about kind of bot we don't have uh, to tie up with Orbit. So that is something which I have in mind. So those are some of the next steps. So overall, what I want to say is here, this is not a big task, and this is one of the easiest migration I have ever done actually. So if any project is planning to do a migration to GitHub, we are here to help, and please let us know if you need any help in this area. Any questions?
All right, let me have a quick look at the Ask a Questions tab. There are no questions there, and there are no questions in the chat either. So we can pass this on to Christoph.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, Sravan, we have one question from Michael Kepler asking, why did you choose so many orgs?
How do I reply?
Here, you can either you can reply here directly, or we can put the answer in the
Okay.
chat. Completely up to you.
Okay. Okay. Uh, so uh, okay, we have 4 different projects. We have uh, split into 4 different organizations. Like Equinox is a separate entity altogether. So Equinox supports OSGi. It's a Eclipse implementation of OSGi framework. So similarly, we have platform, and GDT provides support for new Java languages. So because of that, we decided to split them into different organizations. Each one is not actually, we want to organize them into separate areas. Uh,
Okay, perfect. And then there's another question: documentation, which technology you are using?
okay, our documentation is we use backend is PHP server. Actually, code is written in PHP, and we use Hugo images to host those PHP servers. And
Perfect. Oh,
for the organizations, we need to have the committers also, divide the committers. So basically, we have a committer permissions. We want to control the committership for different repositories at different levels. That is where we manage committerships at organization level. That is how we split into different organizations.
okay,
Okay.
perfect. I think that's it for now. And Christoph, over to you.
I'm a committer of M to Eclipse, and today I'd like to give a short introduction to the Maven target support that recently has become part of the Eclipse platform development. But first, let us take a look at the pain points that had lead to the first basic proof of concept a few years ago. In the past, there were only a few options beside using a P2 site in a target for development in PDE, for example, using a directory of pre-downloaded items, and even that was not supported for a long time by Tycho. While directories are easy to use, they have the drawback of being hard to share and update, so that was not really an alternative to consider. Even worse, some projects that has published P2 sites before dropped support for it, for example Jetty or Eclipse Link, because it became too time-consuming for them to manage a part that is not of interest in their daily business. That lead to a usual workflow. Before even trying out a library, one has to wrap it into a P2 site to make it available to PDE and the build. Actually, most of the time there is already something deployed to Maven Central where the artifacts are hosted together with all the metadata required to use them, and a P2 site is of no use for many other ecosystems, so most projects simply don't care at support for another deployment. And even if one tries to contribute that, it was always hard to convince the maintainer, or even requires a lot of effort to get it working as well as keep it working. So while at first glance it seems not a big deal to do the deployment to a custom P2 repository, it can soon become very cumbersome. First, one usually looks if such thing already exists. Even if something is there, the chance is high it is already outdated. Release cycles are more counted in weeks today than in months or even years. Vulnerabilities are popping up every day, requiring fast reactions that bubble through the dependency chain, so it becomes harder and harder to keep up with this. Even ignoring this for now, the additional effort for setup validation and additional items to be produced, for example features and update site artifacts, can easily become exhaustive for larger dependency change. And even if there are some tools to help with automate this process, it is still horrible to manage such setup. Keep it up to date, and it duplicates a lot of content unnecessarily, what often leads to much frustration. Most of the time, one likes to spend time on developing and not managing dependencies and find places where to deploy this. And when it comes to another part with special requirements in PDE, the source bundles, it even can cause major headache and becomes even more frustrating as these must perfectly match up to work or are simply not shown up at all. What actually puts unnecessary burden on the developers, wastes time and resources that are better invested in other areas. This finally leads to the development of the so-called Maven target support that allows to reuse the artifact and metadata directly in a Maven native way inside Eclipse and seamless integrates with Tycho in your build, so no more IDE build gaps. Let's see how this works. We start with an empty target here, but of course you can combine this approach with any other location type and enhance your existing targets as well. Just make sure you have installed the M2 Eclipse PDE extension. It is already distributed with many Eclipse packages and has recently become part of the Eclipse SDK setup as well. Then it is just a matter of hitting the Add button and choose Maven as the new content for your target. Just insert your desired Maven coordinates into the wizard page. If you copy some XML fragment, for example, as offered by Maven Central Search or from a website snippet, into your clipboard, this is even detected and automatically filled out for you. For this example, if we just keep all the defaults, we will look into the other options in more details on the following slides. After adding it to the target, we can tick the show location content in the lower left to see what you will get as the bundles and features as a flat list. Otherwise, you will be presented a Maven dependency tree you are maybe already familiar from working with the M2 Eclipse POM editor. We see the commons mass bundle and the corresponding source bundle. The Maven provided sources are automatically transformed in a way understood by PDE if necessary. Besides that, there is even some ongoing work in PDE to even use the source jars as is. This all will use the usual Maven workflow, so if your artifacts are already cached locally, this is super fast. If not, they are automatically downloaded. It is often useful to group dependencies by using the plus icon to add multiple items to the same location. Optionally, you can enter a custom label that will show up in the target editor. If not specified, M2 Eclipse will generate one automatically for you. Here again, if you copy a snippet into the clipboard before, click at the plus button, the data will be filled in automatically. You can even copy multiple dependencies at once, that way to insert them with one click. The only thing to consider is that if you group items, they all share the same settings for manifest generation, dependency deeps, or scopes. We will now take a deeper look at those settings as well. Often it is too cumbersome to add each requirement one by one, and of course we can take advantage of the Maven dependency model here. For that purpose, similar to the planner mode for update sites, you can control the level of dependencies you like to include. What could be none, as in the example before, direct, what will only include direct dependencies, or infinite, what will include any transitive dependencies. Dependency scopes let you choose what is finally included. For example, if you like to use compile or runtime dependencies only or any other combination. This is a little bit different than in Maven, as there are no inclusion rules, but on the other hand, you are free to combine anything you want. As you can see, we now get some more listed. If the available options still don't suffice to filter what you want, you can always select an item and choose Exclude on the right to exclude individual dependencies. This works like Maven and is different from the Content tab, so you better don't mix them up. Besides that, the content tab maintains a whitelist, while the transitive dependency exclusion manages a blacklist, what often gives a much shorter list and is easier to understand and maintain. You might ask what happen if the artifact is actually not a bundle. I still need to wrap and deploy it somewhere? First of all, the best and most sustainable solution would be to report this to the original author of that library and ask them to add OSGi metadata at the first place, or even open a pull request to help them with that, and then consume the enhanced artifact directly. If that's not feasible or you don't want to wait for that, it is also both easy and flexible archivable with the M2 Eclipse target support. Just choose missing OSGi manifest, generate, or even ignore if you like to ignore known OSGi artifacts at all. Still, you can control the outcome using edit instructions with the full power of BND. Just visit the mentioned site to learn more. That is used under the hood to generate appropriate metadata, and you can control this even once for a location or for individual items of the location. In this case, we choose the defaults and thus getting a wrapped prefix for the bundle name. This is to prevent confusion it with the official artifact and reminds you that you really should help the project adding OSGi metadata in the first place. If you are using import package, you won't notice much of a difference anyways, but if you reference it with a feature or product where a bundle name is mandatory, just keep this in mind or edit the default naming in the BND settings. As we are talking about features, another handy option is that you can even generate a feature automatically from your location. This is especially convenient if you have feature-based products and like to have an easy way to reference everything from that location. Just enable the Generate Feature setting and you will get 2 more wizard pages to further adjust that. On the first page, only some basic properties are required. If you want to edit further details like licenses, project links, and so on, you can do so by modify directly the source of the target. It is just the usual feature XML you are familiar with embedded there. Of course, contributions making this more convenient, for example, by providing direct UI editing capabilities, would be much smarter, so don't hesitate to propose patches or contact me. On the next page, you can choose to add additional items besides those already included by default. This step is fully optional and can therefore be skipped if nothing else is desired. Your feature is now ready to be used, and a source feature is generated automatically as well if you have chosen to include sources before. There's one special case when you add a POM dependency to your target, then M2 Eclipse uses the information from the Maven model to generate a feature automatically for you. You can still define your own if you are not happy with that. With the new M2 Eclipse release, you can now also add features that are deployed to Maven directly. This is quite new, so please try that out and report any issue back. With nothing else configured, M2 Eclipse resolves your artifacts from the configured Maven repositories. This is often Maven Central. To improve the ability to share your target, you can still add other repositories if the artifacts are not available at Maven Central. This is similar to define additional repositories in a POM XML. Just keep in mind that if it requires authentication or you like to enable mirroring, this must still be configured in your global Maven settings. There's one thing left I like to make you aware of, even if it's not directly related to the new target location type, but still enhances target platform use cases. M2 Eclipse comes with a Maven URL protocol that enables you to use Maven deployed update sites inside the default software site location, while there are 2 ways you can take advantage of it. The first you probably already have came along with is to simply use a Maven deployed zip file. That way you can easily freeze an update site. While this could be used with some workarounds already before, using the Maven protocol followed by group and artifact ID gives you full Maven access, that is, reusing mirror settings, authentication, and caching in the local repository. But be aware that still the full zip must be downloaded once for this to work, so this is generally not suitable for very large sites, but maybe still an option for smaller ones or use cases where you're writing a small plugin that should be installed in Eclipse itself and you don't bother to host it anywhere yourself. Some projects already do this as shown in this example. A more advanced way is a new feature in Tycho that allows to deploy a Maven P2 site where only the site metadata is deployed as an extra artifact, but all plugins are referenced with Maven URLs itself. Thus, they are fully consumed from a Maven repository, but of course you need to deploy them individually as well, but that's often already the case for usual Maven setups. That way, only items you actually select are downloaded later on. For example, the Jetty project make use of that already to support the Eclipse platform and of course other users as well, with an update site without the need to use Tycho or P2 anywhere else in the build. That way, it was possible to bring back P2 support to a project that has dropped it before, and according to their feedback, this really was much more simpler than before. They just love it. You should get a good first understanding of what is possible with the M2 Eclipse Maven target support. If you are eager to learn more, how this has changed the way the Schweizer Bundesbahn is developing software or what is planned for the future, join the EclipseCon 2022 talk. By the way, feel free to report suggestions and even bugs to M2 Eclipse or just propose a patch. Thanks for your attention and I hope you enjoyed it. Are there any questions?
All right, I think that there is a few questions here. Let me just have a quick look. Is it possible to let Eclipse automatically detect the target definition from the pom.xml with Tico?
What is meant by automatically? Because you does it mean that I can use a POM and get automatically generated a
They clarify a little
target?
bit further. It says, so Daniel says, so that one does not have a .target file, but detect that solely from the pom.xml and maybe .class path.
Ah, okay. Yeah, it's not directly possible, but what you can do is that you add the POM file to the target as a dependency, and then everything that is declared in the POM file is automatically added to the target. So you still need a target file for Eclipse, but yeah, it's mostly empty. It just references the POM where you then can declare anything with Maven.
Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any questions. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for the excellent presentation today. And just a reminder in the audience, if anyone has any final questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat or use the Ask the Questions tab. And I'll give you a few moments to do that while I wrap up. All right, so we are looking to book more Eclipse IDE webinars through 2022. So if you have, or if you're interested in presenting, I'll also provide the form that you can use to fill out and complete. And I'm just taking a quick look here. Yes, there's no more questions. We are good to go. So you have yourselves a wonderful day and thank you all so much.